A shadow moves across the Hudson ranch. The wind whispers secrets through the barns. But it's the quiet tension in the air that grips Nathan's heart. Something is wrong, something he can feel but cannot see. Hearts are at stake, lives are in danger, and the clock is ticking. As the horses paw at the ground and the distant storm gathers, Nathan races not just against time, but against the hidden truths that threaten to tear his world apart. Nathan walked along the edge of the barnyard, the ground soft and damp under his boots from last night's rain. He could feel the chill in the air, the kind of cold that sinks into your bones and refuses to leave. Every instinct told him something was off. Normally, the horses would be calm at this hour, grazing or resting quietly in the paddock. But today, even from a distance, he could sense unease. Their ears twitched constantly, tails flicking and hooves stamping nervously. Something or someone was disturbing the peace at Hudson Ranch. He reached the main barn and paused. Hand resting on the doorframe. The faint smell of oats and hay mingled with a sharp, almost metallic scent that made him wrinkle his nose. He scanned the stable, watching as the shadows shifted between stalls. One of the buckets was overturned, spilling a bit of feed onto the wet floor. But it wasn't just carelessness. Nathan knew the horses well, knew their habits, their routines, and this wasn't normal. His gut tightened with a familiar nod of fear and urgency. Nathan stepped inside, boots echoing softly against the wooden floor. The sound was unnerving in the silence of the early morning. Each step made him more aware of how alone he was in this space. Even the morning light slipping through cracks in the barn walls couldn't wash away the feeling that someone or something was watching. He crouched down near the feed bucket, brushing hay aside, and noticed a small, nearly hidden note. The handwriting was unfamiliar, slanted, and hurried. His heart raced as he picked it up. The message was cryptic yet chilling. Some hearts are not meant to be trusted. Act before it's too late. Nathan's hand shook slightly. This was no ordinary prank or mistake. Whoever left the note had intentions, and they weren't kind. He looked around, half expecting someone to step out from the shadows, but the barn was empty. The only movement came from the horses, still uneasy. Glancing toward the corners of the barn as if sensing the same danger Nathan did, his mind raced. Poisoned hearts. That phrase echoed in his head like a warning he couldn't ignore. It wasn't just the note. It was the feeling in the air, the behavior of the animals, the sudden tightness in his chest. He moved quickly to check each stall, scanning feed, water, and bedding. Every bucket, every trough, every bag of feed was examined, his eyes sharp for any sign of contamination. Nothing obvious appeared, but he couldn't shake the nagging thought that danger was hidden. Something subtle enough that only someone with malicious intent could craft. Nathan felt a chill run down his spine. It wasn't just the horses that were at risk. Hearts were at stake, the fragile connections between people he loved and trusted. The farm itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. Nathan left the barn and walked toward the paddocks. His boots sank slightly into the wet ground, and the horses followed, restless but tethered by habit. He stopped by the largest paddock, looking out over the green field. Storm clouds were gathering, dark and heavy, threatening rain. The wind carried a sense of foreboding, rustling the leaves and making the fence lines groan. Nathan's mind raced, thinking about Amy, Ty, Lou, and the others. Each of them had secrets, and Hudson held them close like a vault. If those secrets came out now, the consequences could be devastating. He ran his hand through his hair and closed his eyes for a moment, taking a slow, steadying breath. He needed clarity. But clarity was hard to find when everything around him whispered warning. He retraced his steps toward the barn, glancing back at the paddocks. His eyes caught the way the horses were moving, small shifts and subtle signs only someone who knew them intimately would notice. One of the horses pawed at the ground near the fence line where it usually didn't. Nathan felt the first real spark of dread. It wasn't just unease. Something had already begun, something dangerous that could escalate at any moment. The words from the note burned in his mind. Act before it's too late. Every fiber in Nathan's body screamed urgency. He knew he had to uncover the truth, to act fast. Before poisoned hearts destroyed everything he loved, he moved toward the tack room to gather supplies: gloves, a flashlight, and the small first aid kit that always hung by the door. The room smelled faintly of leather and oil, familiar yet comforting, but Nathan couldn't stay rooted in comfort. Time was slipping, and the shadows in the barn seemed to grow longer, darker, more threatening with each passing second. He paused, listening. The wind howled outside, carrying the low rumble of distant thunder. It was as if nature itself was echoing the turmoil he felt inside. The ranch, his home, had always been a place of refuge, but now it felt like a maze of hidden dangers, each corner a potential threat. Nathan grabbed his flashlight and flicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating dust motes floating in the air. Each step he took was careful, deliberate. He moved from stall to stall, shining the light into every corner, every crevice. He checked feed bags, water troughs, and bedding for anything out of place. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear alone, but from the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. The ranch, the horses, the people he cared for, they all depended on him to see what others could not. To act before it was too late. In the quiet of the barn, Nathan felt the first true pang of isolation. No one else knew yet. No one could help him. The threat was invisible, silent but deadly. His mind replayed the events of the last few days. Subtle tensions between Amy and Ty. Lou's worried glances, the unexplained behavior of the horses. Everything connected, forming a web of secrets and hidden dangers. And he was at the center, tasked with untangling it all before the consequences became irreversible. He knelt down again, examining the spilled feed near the bucket, his eyes narrowing as he noticed tiny traces of powder mixed with the grains. A faint smell tickled his nose, bitter and unnatural. Poison? The word flitted across his mind like a lightning strike. Nathan's pulse quickened. The reality of the situation was undeniable. This was no longer a metaphorical warning. The danger was real, immediate, and deadly. Every decision he made in the next few hours could determine the fate of the ranch, the horses, and the people he loved most. Nathan stood, gripping the flashlight tightly, and scanned the barn one last time before stepping back outside. The storm clouds had moved closer, and the first drops of rain began to fall, cold and heavy on his skin. His mind raced, planning the steps he needed to take, the questions he needed to ask, the actions he needed to make. Every heartbeat echoed in his ears like a drum, reminding him that time was fleeting and the race had already begun. Hudson Ranch, his home, was quiet on the surface. But beneath that calm lay a storm of secrets. A threat that could strike at any moment, and Nathan knew he had no choice but to confront it head-on. The first heavy drops of rain hit the barn roof with a hollow thrum. Nathan paused, listening. Each beat of rain sounded like a warning, a countdown he couldn't ignore. Shadows stretched along the fence lines, and the horses in the paddocks moved nervously, their muscles tensing as if they could sense the danger Nathan only suspected. The ranch, normally a sanctuary, now felt alive with secrets that refused to stay buried. Nathan's mind wandered back to the note. He had found the one that whispered of poisoned hearts and unseen betrayal. His gut told him that someone close to Hudson Ranch had intentions far darker than mischief. He remembered Lou's glances, careful but fleeting. Amy's distracted smiles that never quite reached her eyes, and even Ty's unusually quiet demeanor. There was something simmering beneath the surface, something no one had dared to speak aloud. He opened the tack room door slowly, careful not to startle the horses. The smell of leather and oil was comforting in the chaos, but Nathan couldn't let himself linger in comfort. His flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating the neatly arranged saddles, bridles, and grooming tools. Everything looked normal on the surface, but Nathan had learned that appearances were often the first lie. He ran his hand along a row of saddles, checking for irregularities, subtle signs of tampering. A small scratch on one of the bridles caught his attention, faint but deliberate. Someone had been here, moving silently, leaving traces only a trained eye could see. A sudden rustle outside made him spin, flashlight swinging toward the paddocks. The rain had intensified, bouncing off the ground in silver sparks under the weak barn lights. Shadows shifted, and a horse stamped nervously near the fence. Nathan's heart tightened. Whoever was behind this knew the layout of Hudson, the routines of the horses, and the weaknesses of its people. This wasn't random. It was calculated. He moved to the barn office, a small room tucked in the corner, where Amy often kept the schedules and records. Papers lay scattered across the desk, as if someone had been searching for something, or leaving a message. Nathan picked up a sheet of paper that hadn't been there before, the handwriting unfamiliar but precise. It read, "Time is running out. Trust no one." "The storm is closer than you think." His pulse quickened. Whoever wrote this knew more than they should. He felt the weight of every secret in Hudson pressing down on him. Nathan's eyes flicked toward the window, where the first flashes of lightning split the sky. Thunder followed immediately, shaking the barn walls. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil inside him. He had always believed Hudson Ranch was a place of safety, but now he realized that safety was fragile, and trust even more so. He needed to find answers, but the answers were hidden in plain sight, masked by smiles, routines, and the quiet of the horses grazing in the rain. He left the office and walked toward the paddocks, flashlight in hand, scanning the perimeter of the ranch. Rain soaked through his jacket, cold and relentless, but he hardly noticed. Every shadow, every movement of the horses, every creak of the fence line was a clue, a signal from the unseen forces at work. He knelt briefly beside a trough, inspecting the water. Nothing appeared unusual, yet the instinct in his chest screamed that danger was closer than ever. The poisoned hearts of Hudson were not just metaphorical, they were alive, waiting, and watching. Nathan's thoughts returned to Amy. She had always been the heart of Hudson. Steady and strong, but even her had begun to show cracks. He remembered the way she lingered by the barn door the previous night, eyes scanning the dark fields as if expecting someone or something. He couldn't shake the feeling that she knew more than she let on. Secrets weren't always shared openly. Sometimes they festered quietly until they erupted in ways no one could predict. Nathan clenched his fists, knowing he needed to act before those secrets caused irreversible damage. A flash of lightning illuminated the paddock, and Nathan froze. Across the field, near the far fence, a figure darted between shadows. He couldn't tell who it was, too quick to fleeting, but it moved with purpose, deliberate and silent. His heart pounded. Someone was on Hudson Ranch, someone who shouldn't be here. Nathan took off, boots slipping in the mud, flashlight swinging, chasing the fleeting figure across the field. The horses neighed, startled, running alongside him. Sensing the tension in the air, the closer he got, the more Nathan felt the storm intensify, the rain lashing against him, thunder shaking the earth beneath his feet. Every instinct screamed danger, yet he pushed forward, knowing that whoever or whatever he was chasing could hold the key to the poisoned hearts and buried secrets of Hudson. The figure disappeared behind the barn, and Nathan slowed, chest heaving, eyes straining through the rain and shadows. Whoever it was, they knew the ranch knew him, knew that time was running out. He crouched behind a fence post, listening. The sound of rain masked movement, but his sharp eyes caught a shadow slipping along the barn wall. His mind raced, piecing together possibilities. Could it be someone from the Hudson family? Or an outsider, seeking to exploit the cracks he had sensed for days? He couldn't afford mistakes. Every step, every decision, could tip the balance of trust and danger on Hudson Ranch. Nathan's hands were soaked. Flashlight beam trembling slightly, but he forced himself to stay focused. He needed evidence, a clue, something to unravel the mystery before it consumed everything. The note, the scratches, the unusual behavior of the horses, all signs, pointed to a deliberate plan. A web of secrets spun carefully over time. Nathan took a deep breath, steadying his racing thoughts. He would uncover the truth. Had to. Hudson Ranch, the horses, the people he loved, they depended on him to see what others could not. As lightning struck the distant trees, illuminating the entire paddock for a brief moment, Nathan spotted the figure again, closer this time. His breath caught. The figure paused, almost as if aware of his gaze, then slipped behind the shadows of the barn once more. Nathan clenched the flashlight, heart hammering, and stepped forward cautiously. Every sound, the wind, the bounding of hooves, seemed amplified. The storm outside mirrored the storm building inside Hudson. Tempest of secrets, danger, and desperation. Nathan knew one thing with absolute certainty. The calm of Hudson was gone. The ranch had become a maze of hidden threats and silent watchers. And somewhere in the darkness, someone held the key to the poisoned hearts and the secrets that could destroy everything. He would find them. He had no choice. The storm had settled into a relentless rhythm. Rain hammering the roofs, mud sucking at Nathan's boots with every step. The figure he had seen moments ago was gone, or at least hidden, but the urgency thrummed in Nathan's veins like electricity. Something was moving in Hudson's shadows, something that didn't belong. And Nathan knew with a sudden clarity that time wasn't just slipping, it was running away from him. Every second lost could mean disaster. He ran toward the paddock gate, flashlight slicing through sheets of rain. The horses, sensing his panic, whinnied nervously and shifted in their stalls, their eyes wide and alert. Nathan's gaze swept over them. One horse, usually calm, pawed the ground violently, ears pinned. A small, soaked note lay half buried in the mud nearby. He grabbed it, hands trembling, and saw the words smeared by rain. "Not everyone survives the storm. Trust no one." His pulse spiked. Whoever was orchestrating this knew exactly how to scare him, knew how to manipulate the fragile trust at Hudson. Lightning illuminated the far paddock, and Nathan's eyes caught movement, a flash of shadow darting near the fence line. He bolted, boots slipping, mud splattering, rain soaking through to his skin. Every sense sharpened, the scent of wet hay, the metallic temps of rain on mud, the anxious snorts of the horses, the creaking of the fence swaying in the wind. Nathan was no stranger to urgency, but this felt like the edge of a cliff. Every heartbeat echoing danger. He rounded the corner of the barn and froze. Across the field, faint footprints were visible in the saturated mud, leading toward the storage shed. Someone had moved quickly, deliberately, leaving traces for a trained eye to follow. Nathan crouched briefly, pressing his gloved hands into the mud to study the tracks. They were fresh minutes old. His stomach churned. Whoever this was, they were already planning their next move. And Nathan couldn't afford to wait for mistakes. They couldn't happen. He sprinted across the field, lightning briefly illuminating the barn in harsh white light. Shadows danced wildly across the walls, stretching and shrinking as the storm raged. Every fence post, every puddle became a potential trap. Nathan's thoughts raced as fast as his feet. He thought of Amy, of Ty, of Lou. All the people he cared for, all the lives connected to Hudson Ranch, were vulnerable. Someone was testing him, probing for weaknesses. Nathan realized that the threat was more personal than he'd imagined. As he approached the shed, a sudden flash of movement made him skid to a halt. A shadow slipped along the side of the building, fleeting but deliberate. Nathan crouched, breathing hard, and slowly circled around to the back. The rain pounded his shoulders, chilling and relentless, yet he barely noticed. His mind was entirely focused on one thing: catching the person responsible before the storm and the secrets consumed Hudson. Reaching the back of the shed, he paused. The door was slightly ajar, swinging slightly in the wind. A cold knot of dread twisted in his stomach. He pushed it open carefully. Inside, crates and equipment were stacked haphazardly, shadows stretching across walls like fingers reaching for him. Nathan's flashlight beam caught a glimpse of a figure crouched in the corner, moving quickly to hide something. His heart pounded in his ears. He whispered under his breath, almost a prayer, "Not tonight. Not here." He stepped forward cautiously, the beam of the flashlight bouncing over boxes and barrels, revealing traces of disturbed objects: rope pulled loose, a spilled bag of grain, a small puddle of liquid dark against the wood floor. Nathan's mind worked rapidly. Whoever had been here had left deliberately, but the trail was still fresh. He followed it, flashlight trembling slightly in his grip, toward the far corner of the shed. There, partially hidden under a tarp, was a small crate with scratches across its surface, as if someone had struggled to conceal its contents. Nathan leaned closer, heart hammering, and lifted the tarp dot inside. He found several bottles of medicine and feed, all tampered with. A bitter, chemical smell rose from one of the bottles. Unmistakable and chilling. Poison. The word hit him like a punch to the chest. The threat wasn't abstract anymore. It was real. Someone had tried to hurt the horses, to sabotage Hudson Ranch. Nathan's mind raced, connecting dots. The cryptic notes, the strange behavior of the horses, the shadows moving in the rain, it all pointed to a carefully planned attack. And the more he realized, the more he understood. He was racing against more than time. He was racing against betrayal itself. Nathan's breath came in short, sharp bursts as he grabbed the bottles and shoved them into a backpack. The storm raged around him, wind tearing at his jacket, rain soaking him to the skin. Every instinct screamed to move, to act, to confront whoever had orchestrated this before they could strike again. He ran from the shed, flashlight beams swinging wildly across the muddy field, eyes scanning for any hint of movement. The footprints he had followed earlier had vanished in the fresh rain, but Nathan didn't slow. He had no time. The barn loomed ahead, dark and silent, yet alive with tension. Nathan's mind raced, considering every possibility. Could it be someone from outside trying to sabotage Hudson? Or was it someone